Canada joined the war on September 10, 1939. This was significant to Canada because, recently independent, they joined the war 1 week after Britain to show that they could speak for themselves on what they would and what they would not do. When Canada did join the war, they had a very small army. In fact, at the time, there were only around 11 million people in Canada. This meant they were really in a bit of a situation because they had just declared war on Germany. So they then decided that they had to gather around 32,000 men within a 2-month period. Like they did in World War I, they made propaganda posters saying, well, hey, for example, this man is your friend. He fights for freedom. And that's what would really reel the people in because they thought that it would make a difference and that they would feel important fighting for their country. Unfortunately, however, Canada still needed to end up conscripting their citizens because they were having problems with people joining. It wasn't until the end of the war, though, around 1945, that they actually started to force men to go overseas and fight. Fortunately enough for the families, though, only around 2,500 men were actually sent to fight overseas, and luckily most of them returned. Now, although our army was small, and we were dealing with conscription issues trying to get our men to join, we still had great success in taking down Germany. We helped take the beaches in Normandy on D-Day, which was the first sign of struggle from the Germans and our first sign of relief from ourselves and our allies. However, we also helped in Dieppe, which was when we planned to make a frontal assault on the town of Dieppe across the English Channel on the coast of France. The raid on Dieppe would give the Allies a chance to test techniques and equipment for landing troops from the sea. The Battle of Dieppe, however, was a disaster for the Canadians. Nearly 1,000 Canadians died, and around 2,000 were taken prisoner. Now, although Canada had great success during the war, they had to make the sacrifices to do whatever it took to take down Germany. As a result, we call this total war, when a country is willing to do whatever it takes to achieve victory against the enemy. Canada showed this by turning grocery stores, markets, and even factories that would have produced food into making supplies and weaponry for the war. Canada's economy at the time was actually not that bad, considering they turned grocery stores, their markets, their factories, all into weaponries and armories for the war, which would actually have created quite a bit of jobs. Now, all the stuff they had produced had a net value of around $10 billion, which today is around $100 billion considering. So Canada's economy at the time was actually doing fairly well. Women in Canada played a big role in World War II. Like they did in the First World War, they would work as nurses, helping the injured and dying soldiers. They would also work as factory workers, making supplies for men that were fighting the war. Now those are just 2 examples, however, they did many more things. Surprisingly enough, Canada actually played quite a role in the events of the Holocaust. Now, although they didn't technically participate, it still, kind of counts, because when they turned down the request from the St. Louis ocean liner, which had already been turned down by both America and Cuba, the Jewish passengers, when they returned to Europe, were immediately sent to Nazi internment camps where they were tortured and killed along with another 11 million Jews. Canada, unfortunately, locked up innocent Japanese Canadians in internment camps during World War II. They did this because of the suspicion of them being spies, which occurred during Pearl Harbor. Later on, after they were sent to these camps, they would find out that all of their hard-earned items and homes would be sold without them getting any profit whatsoever. Canada, for the most part anyway, had men that wanted to help fight. However, when they left, they had the huge ceremonies when walking down the ships that would take them to the battle. I thought it was important to show the people the emotion of the families when they saw their fathers and sons leaving to fight a war that they shouldn't have even had to fight in the first place. Protesting during World War II did happen. Although it's not really considered or even really talked about, there's quite a bit of things that people were really angry about. Some people would protest saying, bring our troops home, and some would say to stop the war crimes that went on, but once again, I thought it was a necessity to show all the overall attitudes of the actual people that weren't fighting in the war, but were still living in Canada during the time of the war, and how it impacted them and their families. And last, but certainly not least, the war ended in Europe with the unconditional surrender by Germany on May 7, 1945, and then the Germans surrendered to Russia after Hitler broke the Munich Agreement on May 8, 1945. Germany was defeated by the British and the Americans in the south and the west, and by the Russians in the east. Japan also surrendered to America on September 2nd, 1945, after they dropped 2 atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima in August 1945.